we are recording. Everybody is muted but me. Okay. And Tom, anytime. Count to 5, please, in your head and go.
Hello, I'm Tom Martin, and welcome to another edition of A San Francisco Conservative here on KSFO Radio. I'm here on the East Coast. I'm a longtime journalist. I've produced stories for ABC News, CBS News, CNN, even covered the White House for a year for the Nightly Business Report. I love having stimulating conversations, and that's exactly what we do here, thanks to my co-host, author David Parker, right there in San Francisco. Hey, David, how are you?
I'm fine, thank you.
Great to see you. David, of course, is the author of 3 great books, Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and most recently, Rome 476. You can catch his columns in the San Francisco Bay Area edition of the Epoch Times, often in the national edition as well, and of course, right here on KSFO Radio. And if you like what you hear, I encourage you to go to David's website, davidparkeressays.com, because right there you'll be able to get downloads of each of David's 3 books. But let's get right into it. So David, I was in college way back during the Clinton years, and I remember that political advisor James Carville had a phrase that everybody keeps repeating and repeating and repeating, and you probably know where I'm going with that. But he said, what did he say? You know where I'm going with that?
Yeah, it's the economy, stupid.
That's what James Carville said, exactly. And so it seems like the Biden White House is in turmoil right now. It's like, should we talk about Bidenomics? Should we not talk about Bidenomics? Is it good? Is America hurting? What's your take on all that?
That's a perfect question. And Biden may very well lose because of Biden economics, whatever it's called. Because he, as a Democrat, as a progressive, has only one thought. If he sees a problem, spend money. College students are finding it so expensive. Let's just pay for them. And let's put everybody to work, like this is 1933 during the Great Depression. Let's build infrastructure. Let's rebuild the Hoover Dam if we have to. And let's fight inflation without ever asking, do we really have inflation? During COVID, factories were locked down, but so were citizens. You couldn't leave your house. Nobody was renting cars, getting on airplanes, going to restaurants, going to movies. Nobody was spending money. So the nation more or less has a lot of money in the bank, and the stores more or less are empty. Today, enough time has passed that that's self-correcting at the very moment. But so to fight what is not inflation, it's pure supply and demand causing price to rise, we've raised interest rates. So he's killed a lot of people. I myself am fairly wealthy, and my net income dropped $1 million because interest rates went from 5 or 6 to 8 or 9. It's my thumb is on the pulse of the economy. Biden is going to pay for that, I believe.
So even if millions of American voters don't agree with certain policies that Donald Trump supports, you think, again, I've covered politics for decades now, and it really does seem like, as they say it, the pocketbook is the bottom line. That's how people vote. You really think that's going to, happen in November?
Like in 2016, nobody told their friends and family they're going to vote for Trump. They were embarrassed, and they're still embarrassed. They're not telling them now. But in the election day, the nation may be surprised. Trump almost won the last time, but he was just didn't handle so many things badly. People didn't vote for him, but this time they will. Because
he certainly, we're early on in primary season. I pay close attention to that, and it looks like, with the exception of Nikki Haley, he's really cleared out all of the competition. It's
without even ever debating, because people are feeling it, and they're going to probably vote for him for that reason. The economy, stupid.
Yeah.
And when Trump came into office the first time, he lowered the corporate tax rate from 39%, the highest in the world, because we have to solve our homeless problems and stuff like that. We have to tax Americans until they bleed. He lowered it to 25%. And when he comes in, if he comes in office now, he's going to lower the interest rate. You're just going to order it somehow, or pressure people to drop that interest rate. You're killing too many people. Fortunes are being, people are,
Yeah.
It's
No, I mean,
intolerable at the moment right now.
yeah, no, I mean, you're, you've been you are a very successful real estate investor there in San Francisco, have been for decades now. And you told us about the impact that you're feeling. So it sounds like you don't mind being out of step with the economists who say there really is inflation and we need to worry about the coming recession. You don't, you don't really think these economists know what they're talking about.
Economists are wrong 100% of the time. You never listen to economists. They don't predict anything, and then their solutions are always just spend money. Just read Krugman, whatever his name is, just spend money.
And so are you concerned, from your own personal position there, are you concerned that if Joe Biden is reelected, that the programs he brings in will be so costly that'll have an even further impact on your quality of life there?
Maybe not, because interest rates are coming down, and within 18 months, rates will come down, and people are adjusting their spending, they're adjusting their costs. I'm a very nice landlord. I haven't raised rents in 5 years. I'm slowly raising my rents now, and the rates are going to come down, and I'm going to recover a little bit. And everyone's doing the same who's in my position in any other field. So no, it won't be all that bad if Biden's reelected.
Okay.
Plus, he must know what I'm talking about anyway.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I tell you what, we're going to take a break here. This is a San Francisco conservative. One of the things I really want to get into when we continue is, again, you mentioned rents. You mentioned that you are a landlord. You're a nice landlord. You haven't jacked up the rents. You're feeling the need to do that now. But again, the cost of living, the cost of rent there in San Francisco is nationally. Again, I'm on the East Coast and we know how expensive it can be. So I really want to get into that a little bit. But again, this is a San Francisco conservative. Tom Martin with my co-host, author David Parker. David is the author of Income and Wealth, a San Francisco conservative, and Rome 476. You can catch his columns in the Epic Times and of course right here on KSFO Radio. So we'll continue the conversation in a moment.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.
This is Tom Martin. Be sure to check out davidparkeressays.com. There's news and information about David's books. You can download a free chapter and much more. And David will answer your questions. Keep in touch with a San Francisco conservative, helping to point America to what the founding fathers wanted for this great country. That's davidparkeressays.com. davidparkeressays.com. And be sure to tune in to our next episode of A San Francisco Conservative.
All right, take a deep breath, Tom, and in 5.
Hello, and welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative, right here on KSFO Radio. The spot where you will hear a stimulating conversation about history, economics, and contemporary challenges, as we've been discussing. I'm your co-host, and along with author David Parker. David is the author of Income and Wealth, a San Francisco conservative, and Rome 476. You can read David's columns in the Epoch Times, the San Francisco Bay Area edition, as well as in the national edition. And again, we're grateful for our KSFO audience. So David, we were talking about really how people at all income levels are really feeling the impact of the current economy, and that really is kind of a barometer of what we might see come election day in November. You are very successful in the real estate scene there in San Francisco. And, you mentioned the impact that you're feeling thanks to Jerome Powell and the Fed and those exorbitant interest rates. And so I'd like to talk about maybe people at other income levels. I'm based here on the East Coast, but even from the East Coast, we often hear about the really high rent prices there in San Francisco and the need for affordable housing. I know that you say whenever there's a big problem, send government in. Government can handle it. We have agencies for things like this. So do you really think that maybe many units of affordable housing should be built right there in San Francisco?
But it turns out you can't build affordable housing, and people just are kind of in denial of that. The cost of construction is very high. It costs the same to build expensive housing as it does to build cheap, inexpensive housing. And if you do get the cost down, then you have housing that looks like housing projects. There are some beautiful areas in San Francisco near Golden Gate Park. In fact, I think the Fell and Stanton is a corner that was an empty lot for years, maybe a gas station. They built 5 townhouses in a row that are completely out of character with the beautiful 1920s architecture on the panhandle of Golden Gate Park, by having prefabricated siding, tiny windows, synthetic floors, no ornament. Inside, you have tradespeople told, don't use any of your skills, just install the prefabricated cheap product, get the cost down. And that's not in a low income area, but in low income areas it's even uglier. There's a famous, I won't say anybody's name, but there's some big housing companies, they specialize, and it's the wrong solution. What the city needs to do is get government out of the housing business by removing zoning. There's certain boulevards in San Francisco that you build up 5-10 stories. Geary, for example, from Union Square all the way to the beach should be 10-story apartment buildings all the way on the line with the subway.
So are you saying again? And I had the pleasure of being out there a couple of months ago to see you and hear your jazz sextet, which was great. I encourage our listeners and viewers to check that out as well. So when I was out there, of course, I talked to a few Uber drivers and taxi drivers, and they told me that they couldn't really afford to live in the city. So are you saying that really just forget the idea that forget that dream of affordable housing in San Francisco?
No, here's what I'm saying. I almost forgot what I was saying. Is that build expensive housing, build housing where people want to live. In the Sunset, in the Richmond, in Pacific Heights, in Nob Hill, on Telegraph Hill, maybe along Van Ness Avenue. Don't build 300,000 units where people want to live. You'll free up 300,000 units of middle housing that people who are very wealthy are taking. No one's complaining about the rents because the people in San Francisco, the Googleites and many people are earning big money. They don't care what the rents are. And they're taking up all the middle housing because there's no housing. So build where they want to live, build expensive housing, and all of a sudden you'll have 300,000 of affordable housing there, already built, and quality housing from the past. Don't build new, cheap, and not in areas that people really want to live. It's all wrong.
Yeah, makes sense. So I've asked you before, and I hope you won't give me a different answer this time, but I've asked you, you've been investing in real estate, commercial and residential real estate, for many, many years now. You started when you were a teacher, as some of our viewers and listeners may know, you started as a public school teacher right there in San Francisco, going back 40, 50 years or more. And you started early, and you've built quite a fortune doing that. You've always told me that you're an optimist. Are you still an optimist?
Well, yeah, there's no reason. You just have to solve a few problems, and solving those problems is not really money. If we need new housing, the building industry is dying to build housing. You don't need government to spend money to subsidize affordable housing. Government is involved in so many aspects of the economy and our life that they've destroyed the markets for these areas. Before Medicare, the cost of health insurance was the cost of life insurance. Life insurance, property insurance on a single family $1 million home, and the price of auto insurance, about $200 a month in today's dollars. For a young person, about $50 a month, and an older person, maybe $300 or $400 a month. Completely affordable. We don't need the Affordable Care Act, and we don't need Medicare. Just buy health insurance at $200 a month. Everybody can afford it. If you can't afford it, then we can help people who can't afford it on a means tested. Can you afford $100 a month? Okay, the government's going to give you $100, or go to charity. So there's no market for healthcare. Health insurance today is not insurance. It's prepaid medical care.
Yeah.
My contractor works for me. I was surprised. I thought health insurance was about $1,000. He says, I'm paying $2,000 a month for health insurance.
Wow, that's amazing.
So that's he's a family, but that 2,000 times 12 is 24,000, times 10 years is 240, times 40 years is $1 million. You're just prepaying your health care. It's not insurance. And nobody can afford 1,000 or 2,000. And many people can't afford it.
Let's pick up on that. I'd also like to hear your thoughts again, if Donald Trump is reelected in November, if he's going to be one of those very special presidents. Every couple of decades, one comes along that's very memorable and makes a great impact. We'll talk about that in a moment. This is a San Francisco Conservative with Tom Martin. That's me, and my co-host, author David Parker. And we are here on KSFO Radio. We will be back in a moment.
In the heart of the vibrant city by the bay, meet a voice that's challenging the status quo. David Parker, author of A San Francisco Conservative and Rome 476. David Parker, a true San Franciscan with a conservative vision for the future, is a voice that resonates with our nation's founding fathers. Freedom from government, not with government. For 40 years, he taught in San Francisco's inner city schools, acquired a large real estate portfolio, and worked as a professional musician. The Dave Parker Sextet performs every week. It's time for a fresh perspective, one that values fiscal responsibility, individual responsibility. David Parker is not only an academic, his thumb is on the pulse of the economy. He brings real solutions to all the problems affecting our nation. Learn more at davidparkeressays.com and get a free chapter to any of his books, A San Francisco Conservative, Rome 476, and Income and Wealth. That's davidparkeressays.com.
Hello, and welcome back to A San Francisco Conservative right here on KSFO Radio. I'm Tom Martin, your co-host. I'm a longtime journalist out here on the East Coast. I've produced for ABC News, CBS News, CNN, even covered the White House for a while from the Nightly Business Report. My co-host right there in San Francisco is author David Parker. David is the author of Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. His columns appear quite frequently in the Epoch Times, the Bay Area edition, as well as nationally. And we are excited to be sharing our thoughts with you right here on KSFO Radio. So, David, we were talking about, again, what might happen in November. Again, people don't seem to really appreciate so-called Bidenomics and so on. And, I've studied history also, maybe not as, carefully and meticulously as you have. but it seems like every decade or two or three comes along a president who really makes an impact. And I'm just wondering if you think that Donald Trump, because of the state of the economy, might be one of those presidents. I'm thinking of, you know, Franklin Roosevelt. And again, he brought in, you know, when America was in trouble, he rushed in to save the day. And then again, you know, during the civil rights days, Lyndon Johnson declared the war on poverty. You know, these are presidents taking bold action. And I just wondered if you think that Donald Trump might be remembered that way also.
He might, but not for anything with any real plan. He, Donald Trump planned to run for president when he was 42 and changed his mind. He says, I'm too young. He's been preparing for this for a little while. And then when he did run in 2015, I think it was, he says, I'm going to run as a Democrat. And the Clinton says, no, you're not. That's our party. Okay, I'll run as a Republican. What am I supposed to say? I've always been a Democrat, Donald Trump. And I've always universal health care. I'm for all that kind of stuff. What do I have to say to run as a crazy Republican? So we don't know what Donald Trump thinks. And that's part of his genius. And he'll say one thing one day, something else another day. And we need a person like that to shake things up.
Well, you've done so well. You've done so well in the real estate sector there, investing in commercial and residential real estate. Donald Trump, of course, is a builder. He knows how to bring a project in on budget or under budget. And it seems like just about everyone in Washington, Republicans and Democrats, I'm sure there may be a couple exceptions, but they seem oblivious to the cost of anything. Do you like the fact that he's a builder?
Yes. He's it means in his cabinet, he will have some people who are in business, as opposed to, I don't think there's anybody in business. Very rarely in a Democratic cabinet is there people from business. And that's a needed reference. I needed another point of view. Yeah, bottom line thinking. People think that Franklin Roosevelt saved the day, but he reversed what the founding fathers gave us. Freedom from government to freedom with government. The Depression was over in 1933, but Roosevelt campaigned in 32. I'm going to do all these things. I'm going to bring in the brightest people. We're going to create Plato's Republic. We're going to have an elite running this country. And you're going to give me all the power to do this. And Mussolini was writing laudatory letters, and they were back and forth. Yes, America finally understands fascism. The community before the individual. Yes, you're on the right track now. The Depression was over. He came in, the Depression took a turnaround for another 10 years. And they got out of it because World War II spent so much money, it just brought the economy back up again. If you're willing to do that, throw away all your money on a war, you can bring your economy back. And that's all that happened. And Johnson, the war on poverty, 15% poverty in 64, the needle never budged on average. Today it's still 15%. Throwing money, no solution. You cannot solve personal problems.
Yeah, well, just
not solve problems with money.
That's an important point. Definitely an important point. I want to shift gears a little bit. And earlier in the conversation, we were talking about how Donald Trump has really cleared out all the candidates. Nikki Haley is hanging in there, and we'll see how that goes in the next couple of weeks. But you've spent much of your career, although you've had, I think you said 5 careers as jazz musician, entrepreneur, investor, teacher, a musician, and so on. But earlier, certainly, Ron DeSantis was one of our candidates in the Republican field, and he really paid close attention to what was going on in the schools. Some people accused him of book banning, but you mentioned, really cultivating an appreciation for our founding fathers. Were you disappointed that DeSantis didn't continue?
Well, DeSantis won the first time in Florida, and then he won the second time by a complete landslide, because he says he just brought some common sense to politics. He would have been a fine president. He's educated. He went to Yale. But he's not banning books. He's banning what some of the books the left is throwing into the public schools. He's saying you can't just be teaching, having schools concentrating on diversity when in fact we should be concentrating on the history and culture of British and American democracy. It's why we have, why we're so successful. We have responsible citizens. We don't have citizens on the dole. That was during the Great Depression. Most citizens didn't take the government money. They refused. It was an insult. Americans don't take money. That was one of the great shocks, that people wouldn't accept the money during the Depression. Today, we do.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
if Trump can reverse some of that kind of stuff and bring back a more literal interpretation of the Constitution, which I'm not sure Trump has even read, but he'll be an important person. He will change his nation. And I have to say one more thing. They have to change the gerrymandering of the voting districts. So left people are only running against left, right are only running against right. The most liberal wins, the most conservative wins. They get to Congress, they fight each other, when in fact the nation is moderate.
Yeah.
Have a Congress that does not represent the nation.
Good point. Good point. I want to encourage everyone who's listening and watching to this episode of A San Francisco Conservative. First of all, we thank you for your time and for joining us. And I definitely encourage you to read David's books, David Parker's books, Income and Wealth, A San Francisco Conservative, and Rome 476. You can find them and download free sample chapters, in fact, on David's website, davidparkeressays.com. You can find David's column frequently in the Epoch Times, the Bay Area edition, and nationwide. And we are very grateful to spend the time with you here on KSFO Radio. And send us a note. You can contact David and me through David's website, davidparkeressays.com, and we'd love to hear what you think. Thanks again for joining us. And thank you, David.
My pleasure.
Meet David Parker, a lifelong native of San Francisco, a true Renaissance man, educator, investor, and entrepreneur, jazz musician. David Parker is a San Francisco conservative. That's the title of his second book and this show, one that reminds us all just how precious our democracy really is. He's an optimist, and some of his views may surprise you. Parker's writing reminds us all that the study of history provides important perspective on current challenges. You can learn more about David Parker's writing by visiting davidparkeressays.com. On the website, you can also download a free chapter from Parker's book, A San Francisco Conservative. The impact of Parker's writing extends far beyond the city by the bay. Be sure to visit davidparkeressays.com to learn more and download a free chapter from his book. That's davidparkeressays.com.
This is Tom Martin. Be sure to check out davidparkeressays.com. There's news and information about David's books. You can download a free chapter and much more. And David will answer your questions. Keep in touch with A San Francisco Conservative, helping to point America to what the founding fathers wanted for this great country. That's davidparkeressays.com. davidparkeressays.com. And be sure to tune in to our next episode of A San Francisco Conservative.